Clara Bennett had never imagined that her life would come down to stealing a handful of eggs. The Arizona Territory was locked in the grip of a dry spring in 1884. Dust drifted through the air like smoke, coating the worn trails and the weathered fences that marked the scattered ranches. The creeks had shrunk into narrow streams, crops struggled to survive, and every family counted each meal carefully. For Clara, every sunrise brought the same painful question. How would she feed her brother and sister today? At only 24 years old, she carried responsibilities that would have crushed many older souls. Her husband, Thomas, had died from a fever only a year after they married, leaving her with nothing except a small cabin, a worn wagon, and the promise she had made to her dying parents, to protect her younger siblings no matter the cost. 11-year-old Ben tried to be brave, pretending he wasn't hungry. 8-year-old Lily no longer pretended. She simply smiled less each day. That morning Clara opened the cupboard one last time, hoping somehow food had magically appeared overnight. A small sack of flour sat empty except for a dusting across the bottom. A cracked jar held only a spoonful of molasses. There wasn't even enough coffee left to brew. She quietly closed the cupboard before the children woke. Outside, dawn painted the mountains with streaks of pale gold. The beauty of the desert mocked the emptiness in her stomach. She hitched the old mule to the wagon and drove toward town, hoping someone needed laundry done or a fence repaired. Every ranch she visited gave the same answer. No work today. We're struggling ourselves. Maybe next week. By noon, Clara's shoulders sagged beneath the weight of disappointment. She had earned nothing except sympathy, and sympathy could not fill empty stomachs. As she started the long journey home, she noticed something she had never paid much attention to before. Beyond a grove of cottonwood trees stood a modest ranch unlike the others. Its fences were carefully repaired. Its horses grazed peacefully. Smoke curled from the chimney. And behind a wooden coop, dozens of chickens wandered freely. She knew exactly whose place it was. People in town rarely spoke his name without lowering their voices. The Apache horse breeder. They say he lives alone. Best not wander onto his land. Some claimed he had once been a feared warrior. Others insisted he avoided trouble and simply wanted to be left in peace. Stories about him changed depending on who was telling them. His name was Tala. Clara had never spoken to him. She had only seen him once from across the trading post months earlier, a tall man with long black hair tied behind his shoulders, calm gray eyes, and a quiet confidence that seemed untouched by the fear others carried. She remembered thinking he looked nothing like the dangerous man described in town. Still, stealing from anyone was wrong. Stealing from him could be deadly. She gripped the wagon's reins until her knuckles turned white. I can't. She urged the mule forward. After only 100 yards, she stopped. Ben's thin face filled her thoughts. Then Lily asking the night before. Will we have breakfast tomorrow? Clara closed her eyes. I'm sorry. She turned the wagon around. The ranch sat unusually quiet. No horses moved near the stable. No workers crossed the yard. It seemed deserted. Leaving the wagon hidden behind a patch of mesquite bushes, Clara slipped through a gap in the fence and hurried toward the chicken coop. The hens clucked softly as they wandered around her boots. Inside the nesting boxes rested more eggs than she had seen in months. She reached out with trembling hands. 1 egg. Then another. 5. 7. 8. Enough for several meals. Tears blurred her vision as she carefully wrapped them inside her apron. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'll repay this somehow. She turned to leave. A deep, calm voice stopped her cold. If you plan to repay me, you could have started by asking. Clara froze. Her heartbeat thundered inside her chest. Slowly she turned. Standing only a few steps away was Tala. He held no rifle. No pistol. Only a woven basket filled with freshly gathered vegetables. His expression revealed neither anger nor amusement. Only quiet curiosity. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Finally, Tala looked down at the eggs tucked inside her apron. "You don't steal like a thief," he said evenly. "You steal like someone who has run out of choices." Clara lifted her chin despite the shame burning across her face. "I won't beg. I didn't ask you to." Silence settled between them, broken only by the soft clucking of the hens and the warm desert breeze rustling through the cottonwoods. Then Tala asked the question that changed both of their lives. "Tell me the truth. Who are the eggs really for?" Clara hesitated. She could lie. She could run. Instead, with tears finally escaping her tired eyes, she answered honestly. "My brother. My sister. They haven't eaten since yesterday." Tala studied her for several quiet seconds before nodding once. When he finally spoke, his voice remained calm, but every word carried unexpected weight. "You owe me for the eggs." Clara straightened. "I know. You have 2 ways to repay that debt." She frowned. "What ways?" A faint smile touched the corner of Tala's mouth. "You can work on my ranch until every egg is earned back." He paused just long enough for confusion to cross her face. "Or one day wear white beside me." The basket of eggs nearly slipped from Clara's hands. She stared at him in complete disbelief, certain she had misunderstood. The strangest bargain in the Arizona territory had just begun. Clara stared at Tala as though he had lost his mind. "Where, white beside you," she repeated, her voice sharp with disbelief. Tala met her gaze without the slightest hint of mockery. It was only one of 2 choices. She tightened her grip on the basket of eggs. "I choose work." A faint smile crossed Tala's face. "I thought you would." The next morning, just after sunrise, Clara returned to Tala's ranch. She had barely slept. Part of her expected him to laugh and send her away. Another part feared he had planned to humiliate her before the whole valley. Instead, Tala was already working. He stood beside a corral, brushing a tall black stallion whose glossy coat shone in the morning light. The horse nickered softly as Tala spoke to it in Apache, his calm voice carrying across the yard. Without looking up, Tala said, "You're early." "I said I'd work. And you kept your word." He handed her a pair of worn leather gloves. "Then let's begin." Clara quickly discovered ranch work was far harder than she had imagined. She spent the morning cleaning the chicken coop she had secretly entered the day before. Every nest she touched reminded her of the shame she had carried into the ranch. Next came hauling buckets of water from the well beneath the hot Arizona sun. By midday, her shoulders ached. Her hands were blistered. Dust clung to her dress, and loose strands of chestnut hair stuck to her face with sweat. Tala never barked orders. He simply worked beside her. If a fence post needed replacing, he showed her how to set it straight. If a horse grew restless, he patiently explained how animals trusted calm hands more than loud voices. "You can't force respect," he said while adjusting a saddle. "You earn it." Clara wasn't sure whether he was talking about horses, or people. When the sun reached its highest point, Tala motioned toward the shade beneath an old cottonwood tree. "Lunch." Clara hesitated. "I didn't bring any food." "I noticed." He opened a cloth bundle containing fresh bread, dried venison, cheese, apples, and boiled eggs. He quietly divided everything into 2 equal portions. "I can't take your food," Clara protested. "You've already tried taking my eggs," Tala replied with a slight grin. "This way is simpler." For the first time since meeting him, Clara laughed. It surprised both of them. Word traveled quickly through the nearby settlement. By afternoon, 2 ranchers stopped at Tala's property to deliver horse feed. The moment they noticed Clara working beside the Apache rancher, they exchanged uneasy glances. One of them smirked. So, Bennett couldn't find work with her own people? The other laughed. Careful, Clara. Folks might think you've switched sides. Clara felt her cheeks burn. Before she could answer, Tala calmly continued repairing the fence as though he hadn't heard them. The ranchers waited for a reaction. None came. Embarrassed by the silence, they eventually rode away. After they disappeared down the trail, Clara looked toward Tala. Why didn't you say anything? He shrugged. People who arrive looking for a fight usually leave disappointed if they don't find one. Over the next several days, a quiet routine formed. A section of the wall shifted inward. Careful. Tala called. Clara jumped back just as several rotten boards collapsed, revealing a narrow hidden space between the walls. What is that? She whispered. Tala climbed the ladder beside her. Behind the loose board sat a small iron lockbox coated in years of dust. His expression changed instantly. I haven't seen this since my father died. He carefully lifted the heavy box down and brushed away the dirt. The lock had long ago rusted open. Inside lay several neatly folded documents wrapped in faded leather, along with an old silver medallion engraved with the symbol of Tala's Apache clan. He unfolded the first paper with great care. Clara watched as surprise crossed his face. What is it? She asked. My father's land agreement. He handed it to her. Although worn with age, the document was still readable. It carried official territorial seals and signatures recognizing an agreement made nearly 30 years earlier between Apache leaders and the territorial governor. According to the map attached, Tala legally owned thousands of acres stretching beyond the hills surrounding the ranch. Clara looked up in disbelief. Why has no one ever spoken about this? Tala folded the papers carefully. Because many people would rather pretend this agreement never existed. The storm finally broke as they hurried back toward the ranch house. Rain pounded the roof while lightning flashed across the dark sky. That evening, Tala placed the documents inside a locked cabinet. My father always believed these papers would protect our home. He looked toward the window. I'm no longer certain. 3 days later, Clara rode into town to buy flour and medicine for Lily's cough. As she stepped out of the general store, a polished black carriage rolled to a stop nearby. A well-dressed man climbed down. His tailored coat was spotless despite the dusty streets. A gold watch chain glimmered across his vest. Everyone seemed to notice him. Some even tipped their hats. Clara recognized him immediately. Silas Whitmore. The wealthiest landowner in the county. His ranch already stretched farther than most people could ride in a day. Yet rumors claimed he still wanted more. Whitmore smiled politely. Miss Bennett. She nodded cautiously. Mr. Whitmore. I hear you found employment. I have. With the Apache. His smile never reached his eyes. I've also heard you've become quite useful. Clara felt uneasy. I'm only helping at the ranch. Whitmore stepped closer. Tell me. Have you noticed anything unusual there? She frowned. I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, perhaps old papers. Maps. Property records. The word struck her like a hammer. How could he possibly know? She forced herself to remain calm. I don't know anything about that. Whitmore studied her face carefully. Then he reached into his pocket and removed a small leather pouch. The unmistakable sound of coins clinked inside. There are $100 in here. Clara's breath caught. It was more money than she could earn in years. All you have to do is tell me where those papers are kept. She stared at the pouch. With that money she could repair her cabin. Buy proper clothes for Ben and Lily. Never worry about another empty cupboard again. For one long moment, temptation whispered in her ear. Then she remembered Tala sharing his lunch beneath the cottonwood tree. Teaching her to ride. trusting her with his ranch, treating her with respect when no one else would. She slowly shook her head. I can't help you. Whitmore's pleasant smile disappeared. You should think carefully. I already have. His eyes narrowed. You're making a costly mistake. No, Clara answered firmly. I'm avoiding one. Without another word, she walked away. From across the street, Whitmore watched her leave. His expression had grown cold. Very cold. As Clara disappeared around the corner, he turned to the two rough-looking riders waiting beside his carriage. She knows where the papers are, he said quietly. And if she won't tell us? He glanced toward the distant hills where Tala's ranch stood beneath the evening sun. We'll simply take them ourselves. Far away, unaware of the danger now closing in, Tala finished locking the ranch house for the night. The peaceful days on the ranch were about to end. That first sign of trouble came with the silence. For weeks, Tala's ranch had been filled with familiar sounds, the steady rhythm of horses walking through the fields, the laughter of Clara's younger siblings when they visited, and the peaceful conversations beneath the old cottonwood tree. But on that particular evening, the land felt different. The birds had stopped singing. The horses shifted nervously in their stalls. Even the wind seemed to carry a warning. Clara noticed it while repairing a broken saddle near the stable. Tala, she called quietly. He looked up from sharpening a tool. What is it? I don't know. She glanced toward the darkening hills. But something feels wrong. Tala studied the horizon for several seconds. He trusted instincts more than rumors. And his instincts told him danger was coming. That night, Clara could not sleep. The conversation with Silas Whitmore kept replaying in her mind. The cold smile. The hidden threat. The way he spoke about Tala's land as if it already belonged to him. Near midnight, she saw a flickering light beyond the trees. At first, she thought it was a lantern. Then she saw another. And another. Riders. Many riders. Her heart stopped. She rushed outside. Tala. The Apache rancher stepped from the house, already awake, a rifle in his hand. How many? At least 10. He looked toward the distant flames appearing near the outer fence. They came for the documents. Clara's face tightened. This is because of me. Tala shook his head. No. His voice was firm. This is because some people believe everything has a price. The attack began moments later. Gunshots tore through the quiet desert night. The hired men rushed toward the barn, setting fire to the dry hay stacked inside. Orange flames exploded against the darkness. Horses screamed and pulled against their ropes. Without hesitation, Tala ran toward the burning stable. Get the horses out. Clara followed him. Together, they opened the stalls one by one, guiding terrified animals away from the flames. Smoke filled Clara's lungs, and heat burned her face. A wooden beam collapsed nearby. Tala grabbed her arm and pulled her away just before it crashed to the ground. Are you hurt? She shook her head. But the barn. Forget the barn. He looked at her. People and lives come first. Those words stayed with her. Even while his own home burned, Tala cared more about others than what he might lose. Outside, the fight grew more intense. The attackers expected an easy victory. They believed Tala was only one man protecting a piece of land. They were wrong. From the surrounding hills came the sound of approaching horses. Several Apache riders arrived to help defend the ranch. They had seen the smoke from miles away. They had not come for war. They had come because Tala had earned their respect. Soon, several honest neighboring ranchers also arrived, men who had once doubted Tala but now understood the truth. The battle became a fight between greed and loyalty. Clara stayed near the ranch house, helping protect the younger children who had arrived with nearby families seeking shelter. But when she saw a rider approaching the locked cabinet where Tala kept the documents, she knew she couldn't stay back. She grabbed a lantern and moved through the smoke-filled yard. The attacker saw her. "You know where they are," he shouted. "Tell me, and you walk away." Clara stared at him. Months ago, she might have been afraid. Months ago, she might have thought only about survival. But she was no longer the desperate woman stealing eggs to feed her family. She had found something worth protecting. "You came all this way," she said calmly. "And still don't understand." The man frowned. "Understand what?" Clara stepped closer. "Some things can't be bought." Before he could respond, Tala appeared behind him. The attacker reached for his weapon, but Tala moved faster. Within seconds, the man was disarmed and forced to surrender. By sunrise, the remaining attackers had fled. The ranch was damaged. The barn was gone. Several fences had been destroyed. But the people remained standing. The documents were safe. And so was everyone Tala cared about. As the first light touched the burned fields, Clara stood beside Tala and looked over the destruction. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Tala turned toward her. "For what?" "This started because I found those papers." "No," he answered. "It started because someone wanted what wasn't theirs." She looked at him quietly. "You could have sent me away." Tala shook his head. "You were never the danger." A small smile appeared on his face. "You were the person who warned me." For the first time, Clara understood something clearly. The debt between them had disappeared long ago. She had come to Tala's ranch as someone who needed saving. But now she stood beside him as someone he trusted. And somewhere between stolen eggs and a burning barn, two people from different worlds had become family. The days after the attack were harder than any Clara had ever known. The once peaceful ranch now carried the scars of the violence. The wooden barn where Tala had trained young horses was nothing more than blackened beams and ashes. Several fences had been destroyed, crops had been trampled, and the fields that once looked endless now seemed wounded. Yet every morning, Tala woke before sunrise and began rebuilding. He repaired the fences. He cared for the injured horses. He helped his neighbors rebuild their damaged homes. He never complained. He never spoke about what he had lost. But Clara noticed something in his eyes that no one else saw. A quiet exhaustion. The attack had not broken his body. It had tired his spirit. Clara worked beside him every day. She carried supplies, repaired equipment, and helped organize food for the families who had taken shelter at the ranch. The same woman who had once entered his property secretly now walked through it like she belonged there. And perhaps, she realized, she did. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Clara found Tala sitting alone near the remains of the old barn. He held a small piece of burned wood in his hands. "What are you doing here alone?" she asked. Tala looked up. Remembering. She sat beside him. "Your father built this place." He nodded. He believed land was not something a person owned. He looked across the damaged ranch. It was something a person protected. Clara lowered her eyes. "You protected it." Tala was silent for a moment. "Maybe." His voice became quieter. "But sometimes protecting something means knowing when to let it go." The next morning, Clara woke to a strange feeling. The ranch was unusually quiet. When she stepped outside, she found Tala preparing his horse. Her heart sank. "Where are you going?" He tightened the saddle strap before answering. "North." "For how long?" He paused. "I don't know." Clara stared at him. "You can't leave." Tala looked at her gently. "The attack will not be the last. Whitmore will return. He will bring more men." Clara shook her head. "Then we fight again." Tala looked surprised. "You would stay?" She looked around the ranch. At the repaired fences. At the horses she had helped care for. At the home that had become more than a place of work. I think I already have. Tala lowered his gaze. Clara. She noticed the sadness in his voice. I won't allow my troubles to destroy your future. My future? She stepped closer. You think leaving protects me? It keeps you safe. No. Her voice softened. But it takes away my choice. Those words made him stop. Because they reminded him of the day they first met. The day he caught her with stolen eggs. The day he offered her a choice. Clara smiled faintly. Do you remember what you told me? Tala looked at her. You said I had 2 ways to repay the debt. A small smile appeared on his face. I remember. You told me I could work until the debt was paid. She took a breath. Or wear white beside you. For the first time, Tala looked almost uncertain. I never meant to pressure you. I know. I said it because I thought you would choose work. I did. She smiled. And I did. A gentle silence passed between them. Then Clara continued. But somewhere along the way, I stopped working because I owed you. She looked toward the ranch. I stayed because this became home. Tala looked away toward the mountains. I am Apache. I know. My life is not easy. I know. People will judge you. They already do. My enemies may come again. Clara stepped closer. And I will still be here. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Tala finally understood. She was not the frightened woman who had entered his chicken coop. She was the woman who had stood beside him when everything burned. Weeks later, the ranch became the gathering place for a remarkable event. Apache families arrived from nearby lands. Settlers who once doubted Tala came as well. They came not because everyone had forgotten their differences. They came because they had witnessed something stronger than prejudice. They had seen loyalty. They had seen courage. And they had seen 2 people refuse to let hatred decide their future. Standing beneath the rebuilt cottonwood shelter, Tala turned toward Clara. Are you certain? She smiled. For the first time in my life. The white dress she wore was simple. Not expensive. Not decorated with jewels. But it carried a meaning greater than wealth. It represented a choice. Not a debt. Not a bargain. One afternoon, a young boy approached Clara while she was feeding the chickens. Is it true? He asked. She smiled. Is what true? That you used to steal eggs from Mr. Tala? Clara laughed softly. Who told you that? My father. She looked toward the boy's father, who quickly pretended to be interested in repairing a fence. Clara shook her head with amusement. Yes, it's true. The boy's eyes widened. Weren't you scared? She thought about it. I was. Then why did you do it? Clara looked at the ranch stretching beyond them. Because sometimes people do things when they believe they have no other choice. The boy nodded seriously. And what happened? She smiled. Someone gave me another choice. Years later, people would tell many stories about Tala and Clara. Some said Tala was the strongest rancher in the territory. Others said Clara was the bravest woman they had ever known. But those who truly knew them understood the real story. It was not about a warrior saving a helpless woman. It was not about a thief becoming worthy. It was about 2 people who discovered that kindness could change the direction of a life. One evening, as the sun lowered behind the mountains, Clara and Tala sat beneath the old cottonwood tree. The same tree where they had shared their first meal. The same tree where Clara had begun seeing the man behind the rumors. She rested her head against his shoulder. Do you ever regret that day? She asked. Tala looked confused. Which day? The day you caught me stealing eggs. A quiet smile appeared on his face. No. Not even a little. He looked toward the ranch filled with families, horses, and children playing together. No. He paused. That was the day I found someone who was brave enough to admit the truth. Clara smiled. And I found someone who was kind enough to listen. The years passed, but the story remained. Travelers crossing the Arizona frontier heard about the ranch where no one went hungry. They heard about the Apache rancher who chose compassion over anger. They heard about the woman who entered his land looking for food and left with a family, a home, and a future. And whenever someone asked Clara how everything began, she always gave the same answer. It started with a few stolen eggs. Then she would look toward Tala and smile. But it became something much bigger. Because sometimes the smallest moments create the greatest changes. Sometimes a mistake opens the door to forgiveness. And sometimes the person who catches you at your lowest point becomes the person who stands beside you for the rest of your life.